Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. I hope you're all having a lovely start to the week, and it's not too stressful. This video is a 25 Necrotic wake that I did yesterday, so without any further delay, let's get into the video. So, going into the video then. First thing first, we are running a slightly different build. Like, we don't have a survival hunter, we actually have a fire mage and a outlaw rogue with us. This was predominantly a pug group. I was playing with bad skills again. Seems to be a recurring theme here at this point. But again, no voice. And this was a complete pug. We had Demon Hunter that we'd run a few keys with previously. And the route as a result is a little bit different than what you might be used to. But it is quite a good route. So starting off this pack, you can see that I am the PI target. I'm not the PI target throughout the entire dungeon because Power Infusion doesn't quite line up with where I'm using my cooldowns. But as you can see, this first pack pretty much falls over really quickly. We have used Shackle Undead to deal with the Inspiring Undead. Really good use of Shackle throughout this. So kudos to Mad Skills for that. And you can see that the pack very, very quickly died, and we're kind of waiting for the patrol to come back around to us, so we're not just fighting one mob on its own. Now, for those of you that may have seen this route before, you know that we're going to go through the two gatekeepers in the middle. Generally speaking, this would be an Invis Pop moment, maybe a Mind Soothe, and just generally trying your very, very best not to ninja pull. One of the benefits of having a rogue, though, is we do have access to Shroud of Concealment, which is the tool that we are going to use for this, because I have already used my potion, and have already kind of bursted hard to get everything rolling early on. As you can see, we have bloodlusted, and we're going to be relying on the Kyrian weapons throughout this dungeon. So, huge MVP. You can see there I was double checking. It wasn't an intentional use of a portion, but given the fact that it's next to my trinket and my racial binding, it was a fat finger on the account of my keybinds. But Shroud kind of pulled us through. So, it's good, but communication going forward is always a good thing. This wasn't the smoothest of runs, like there were a few deaths, but had we been on voice, I imagine it would have been considerably smoother and could have been done a lot faster. Because then we'd have some idea what the tank was thinking when he does things. Because you can see, or you could see, early, if we just go back to this, my buff is just about to expire. I have 4 seconds left on the Free Infernal. And obviously, I'd like to drop it onto a pack. But if we play it again, what I actually do is I just cast Rain of Fire, so I get my Blasphemy Infernal as the orb spawn, and then we try and get into combat as quickly as possible. You can see that I Havoc, Conflag, and just start going into a rotation. Did put him late on Blightborn to try and get dots rolling. I'm a little bit slow out the gate here, slower than I would have liked. But this is because I was trying to maximize both my positioning and making sure that we weren't in a bad spot. Because we had previously attempted this key earlier in the night with the same tank, and it was a 24, which we ended up inting essentially, due to the fact that I somehow took aggro in my haste to get into the group to help with the Kyrian Orb. I ended up taking aggro on 2 mobs and got slapped for it. So, trying to learn very much from other keys throughout the night. As you can see, the Kyrian weapons are doing a huge amount of work, which is why this particular pull and this particular pull style is very, very good. It is very reliant on your tank, however, being able to stay alive, because there's a lot of pressure being put out on him while we deal with everything else. Now, this is one of the drawbacks of being Dreamweaver. As you can see, I am stood in my field of blossoms, and I really don't want to move. The problem with this is, I'm about to get myself cornered off. So, I preemptively place my gateway. As you can see, fetid gas is now down, which means that if I wanted to get there, I would have to either run a long distance or go very, very close to the other pack. Now, the worm spawned in a fortunate place. I believe I was actually the one targeted as I was transitioning. Either that or it was the mage. And we were able to put them in an already used up space. Now, me standing at a distance wasn't great because it didn't mean that my Kyrian Orb was wasted. But all in all, Blightborn goes down really quickly, and yeah, the Kyrian weapons did 13 million damage, so, you know, fair and balanced. Now, Infernal is really, really good at the moment. It's coming up on cooldown exactly when I need it for these larger packs, and we're able to pump a lot of damage into the harvesters. We do end up with the Drifter here, which is a little bit weird, and I'm going to explain why in a moment, and it's because of the route pathing. We're actually going to skip packs in a moment, and it might seem a little bit backwards, but this actually worked really, really well the couple of times we've tried it. And it does rely heavily on the use of Kyrian weapons. So if you want to save your Kyrian weapons, like if it's a Tyrannical week, for instance, then this route may not necessarily be the best way to play. But this week with Fortified Inspiring Grievous, it is actually quite good. Or it felt good to play. Because as you can see, we have war. Soldiers taking a little while to die, but between pets and 2 bronze, it goes down without a hitch. So you can see here that we're actually just waiting in the middle. And we're waiting for the Goliath to be repaired, for its orbs to be spawned, and then watch what happens. Because we move around the Necromancer and his frozen mages. We're then going to pull the Marauder and Nazuda, the named mob. We've blinded and imprisoned the sorcerer who is the inspiring mob, which means that we're free to kick and free to use the anima orb, which is what the tank does. And as you can see, the pack pretty much just gets devoured, with only Nazuda being a problem. But with the amount of offensive dispels we have, his shield, which makes him immune to physical damage, is irrelevant. It'll also be irrelevant due to the fact that we only really have the 1 melee DPS that is quote-unquote physical, because you got to remember that melee DPS aren't always physical. Paladins, frost mages, and the like. But we're still able to remove that shield. And then it's just the sorcerer that goes down. So all in all, what should be a very, very dangerous pack was actually handled really well and really quickly, as you can see. And it's with a good amount of count. So that explains the slight woe issues. As you can see, my ring is still the summoned motes of intellect. I was playing around with my stats. As you can see, I'm running 34 haste, 24 crit, 34 mastery, 7% verse, and I have 3% speed addition on my cloak. Now, this is making full use of Shroud, because we Shroud and we're shackling the mage just so it's out of the way. Now, I am trying to adhere to my use Infernal on cooldown mantra, so you're going to see that I do drop it here. It's probably not the most ideal place to pop it, but I'm trusting the other DPS to be able to do the larger pack that we're going to move on to in a minute. And I also know that we need to pull the Marauders anyway. So the Marauders are going to get pulled, but they're also going to be deleted by the malfunctioning Goliath's anima orbs that we're about to get. You can see there that the tank has pulled them to us. So I still have a few seconds left on the Infernal. We're able to make use of this. We've got the Blasphemy Infernal out, and we're slowly just moving forward. So you can see that we move forward now. Kicks aren't a problem. Slight overlap on the kicks between me and Demon Keita, the Demon Hunter tank that we had. Again, this is just a slight lack of voice thing where you can call your kicks. But all in all, not too shabby. So you can see there that I use Curse of Tongues, because we only have a couple of kicks available to us, and again, our Rogue and Demon Hunter tried to kick the same target. Now, we do end up with a slightly sloppy moment here, where our Fire Mage ends up potted, and Pleb or Mad Skills goes down because our tank turned the Marauder as it went into a cleave, which just flat out one-shot him. Now, I was able to get Mad back up quickly, which meant that our Demon Hunter tank ended up with Guardian Spirit and survived the pull. Little bit messy, but we did alright. Now, this is another woe pick, rather than Dismantler. And this is because once we've picked up the spear, we are going to end up going straight to the boss. Now, at this point, I'm told to pick up the hammer, so that's what I go do. And the rogue is told to pick up the spear. However, the rogue has said that he already has a spear, so he can't pick up the second one. Which means that once the drifter goes down, the bone carver's been imprisoned. I wait a moment for my Blasphemy Infernal to die. I get close enough to pick it up. So I am now carrying both a spear and a hammer. The spear will be used during Surgeon Stitchflesh, and the hammer will be used during the Rhinebinder fight. And that's kind of how we discuss everything. Now, that was me just clarifying that I have both hammer and spear, and this is where our Marth becomes a fight. Now, we're about to get Bloodlust shortly, but you can see that the tank is moving it into a corner. Now, the reason for this is because it clusters the spawns for these ads. This does mean that CCing them is sometimes more difficult, because if you have a lot of passive AoE, they're going to be broken out. Like Infernal's Immolation Aura, for instance, Rain of Fires, Combustions, the things like that. And you can see there that Skull was immediately broken out, so it gets kicked into the group, and then it just becomes an AoE fest. Now, thankfully, because we're in a cooldown situation, me and the mage are able to pretty much just delete these ads anyway, and it's not really a problem. We do have the lone mage CC'd and shackled, so he will detonate in a moment. But not really too much to say for the Marth fight. Obviously, you need to make sure that the ads die, so that they don't end up detonating and killing you, which they've been known to do in other groups. Now, because they're all clustered, we don't have any CC out on this, so it's just a case of kill everything, and being able to fully utilize Soul Rot and get the 20% haste, 20% crit, as well as Dreamweaver's haste is really, really nice during this fight. So, it is one of the perks. Unfortunately, it does still mean that you're trying to, like, root yourself. So you can see there that I very nearly got hit by the Necrotic Breath. And Final Harvest is somewhat irritating because it's like playing the hokey cokey. But, can't be helped. Now you can see there that I applied Curse of Tongues, and this was just generally because I felt that kicks weren't being got and it was unnecessary damage going out. So it just spaces the kicks out a little bit further for us. Now, I drop Infernal late in this fight, and generally I'd probably wanted to hold it until going upstairs, but I trust the tank for the most part, so that we're going to then go into any large pulls, and I should have my Infernal back. Should. And you can see that I also Soul Rot under the same vein of just getting him off down. We want him dead. And you can see just how reliant our DPS is at the moment on the Kyrian weapons, because they're doing nearly 40k DPS at this point. I'm doing 31, the mage is doing 24, and the rogue 17. Like, we are working we're working these weapons really hard in this run. Now, I informed the group that I have 1 minute 20 until Infernal, thinking that, you know, that might change how we're going to pull. And spoiler alert, unfortunately, it doesn't. Apologies for the yawn, I'm recording this fairly early in the day, and I don't do mornings. And I've tried to simulate night because it's the best light setting for you guys. So, yeah, I don't have Infernal for another 40 seconds. And unfortunately, we're in a position where we've got a pack, and our tank is kind of greeding a little bit. Now, unfortunately, the parts do just target whoever they want, so I didn't react quite fast enough, and as a result actually got potted. This means that for a good portion of this fight I'm actually completely and utterly useless. And it begins to show, because otherwise I'd have my Infernal out by now, and we'd be rolling through. So, I'm finally able to drop my Infernal. Infernal starts applying some damage, and we start applying some pressure. Now, this is where things start to go wrong. Because our tank is greeding. Our tank goes down. I've popped my cooldowns and stuff, but now have aggro and immediately get slapped and killed. Now, we release as quickly as we can to get back upstairs, and the tank knew that they greeded at that point. They should have like bounced out and just kited, but they thought that we could get the large mob down in time so that he wouldn't get decimated as much by the dismantle. And thankfully, however, this wasn't a pack reset because we were able to keep them in combat through the chaining of deaths to the point where the tank could get back and then survive. Because at this point, the tank can just keep himself alive no matter what. I Mortal Coiled there to give us a little bit of extra time for the Throw Cleaver. Although it was a dangerous play because there's no guarantee that he would have gone left or right. So he could have gone into one of these packs and we not be prepared for it. Now, this pull I wasn't expecting in it being a double, and as a result it does get a little bit on the sloppy end. Because you can see that the Interceptor just kind of does what he wants for a while, as we're trying to deal with the Collector and the Creation and the Crafter. Because the Collector is the dangerous one. With it being a fortified weak, if he gets a Gore Splatter off, shit hurts. And as you can see, Mad is on about half mana at the moment. He has 42% mana-ish, which isn't great. Because these 100% that you can see, or the percentages, rather, that you can see on my screen next to the names are secondary resources. So you'll see that the rogue's bouncing from like 19%, 28%, 15%, 42%, and that's his energy as he's spending it. Mine pretty much stays above 90 at all times, and this is because I don't really spend that much mana. As is the same with the mage, whereas Mad is at 31% mana now. So he really needs an if we can get it. Because he's beginning to struggle on the mana front. You can see it's hovering around 30% now. But he is dipping down to 25, 27, and then able to recuperate it back up to 40 through the use of some spells and abilities that allow for the regain of mana or through potions. But obviously potions have a cooldown, so he can't do it constantly. Now, we're going to kill the soldier, and then he's going to chain the creation into the next pack. At which point we need to get So you can see that Tank's preparing himself for a chain. And off he goes, just as creation is about to fall. When he said in party chat that he can chain, I was expecting him to go a little bit faster into the chain, maybe with a little bit more health, but then again, he did still chain because we didn't drop combat. Now, hindsight going through this myself, looking at it now, having slept on it, the Collector, because the Collector is the inspiring mob, what I should have also done is Curse of Tongue, which you can see that I do now at half health, but I should have done it much sooner. Unfortunately, me and Attila, the mage, both tried kicking the same cast, which meant that my kick was wasted. And for some reason, my kick came back off cooldown before his did with the weak aura, so I don't quite understand that. But it is also saying that I've got 43 seconds left on my kick. So, again, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. Because my pet kick is a 24-second cooldown, but for some reason it is quite a long cooldown now. I'll have to try and look through the logs to explain that phenomenon. Although if someone's got an idea, please do let me know. Didn't realise that when I played through it last time. Now, unfortunately, I got double targeted. And there is very little in the way that I could have done in order to prevent getting slapped by either one or both of them. That was just a fat finger kick on my part. Now, this probably isn't the most ideal place to use an Infernal, but it helps in terms of ensuring that... yes. It helps in ensuring that these two go down, because they are problematic. However, what you can see there is the fact that because the rogue died, I ended up getting targeted with double cleavers. And where I was positioned, I couldn't get there fast enough for one of the cleavers to be soaked by the mob, and for the second to then be taken by, like, the tank or myself, because I could have survived one, not both. But these two assistants are an absolute nightmare on fortified weeks. Unfortunately, the tank ended up taking that through cleaver, but we finally get the two ads down. Now, unfortunately, dying while Infernal was up and being PI'd is just really painful. And it does kind of dampen morale slightly, but sometimes it just can't be helped. It's just bad luck, unfortunately. But we've got a minute left, or minute and a half left until Infernal's back. Which means that we're going to pop it on the other pack. And you can see that I've got PI now, but don't really have anything to use it with. This PI would have probably been better spent on maybe the Rogue or the Mage. But I think Mad thought that I was going because I soul rotted, perhaps. But as you can see, like, my Omnibar CD says that there's 40 seconds until Combustion's back, 25 seconds until my Infernal's back, and 40 seconds until I get an Unending Resolve back. So this pack should go down not in the not too distant future. But the Rogue was very much doing the work here. Don't know what cooldowns he had available to him, but he did work, which was good. And we've still got access to a lot of weapons as well. Because there's a lot, as you guys know, Stitch Flesh is a pain. So is usually where weapons are required. Where the weapons are required. I was just checking there that we had 8 deaths, and I was seeing like how badly I was performing. Because the joke at this point was I typed into party chat, I don't know what killed me, and the tank's response was the ghost of Christmas past. Very much reminiscent of the first key we did of the night, where I just got bowled over and had no idea what caused it. Very much feeling like the liability in this key. So, trying to make sure that I perform better. Now you can see that I popped the Infernal here. And one thing to highlight again with it being Necrotic Wake, and something that I keep forgetting, is you cannot Rain of Fire up here for your free casts. Otherwise you do not get your Blasphemy ad. And it's something that I need to emphasize. Because throughout the course of this footage, while we've been up here, I've been Rain of Firing during the AoE periods like you're supposed to. But the Infernal hasn't been spawning, and it's only in this pack when I realise, and I start throwing my Chaos Bolts back out, do I actually start getting my Blasphemy Infernal back. So my damage is actively hampered up here because of this bug. Now, the Rogue and I are both going to Spear, which means that pretty much dies an Ion immediately. And the Creation also takes a considerable amount of damage as well. So, Kyrian Weapon's doing some work. What this does mean is that I don't really need to pop my Infernal. and we end up just holding the Infernal until the final boss. Now, if the dungeon was to end here at this point, with me doing 22k and the Kyrian weapons doing 22.3, I'd have been fairly happy. But as it is, the Kyrian weapons true MVP. Snitch Flesh gets pulled down, becomes a priority target, less than 1 million health left to go. He's just going to fall over, so we don't need to worry too much about any more ads being spawned or whatever else. We do end up on a whiff with the meat hook, and the rogue just got slapped by morbid fixation. So he releases. I throw down another soul well, but people just go up. And we end up with probably what is the worst fight for Warlocks in this entire dungeon. And this is because of how long it takes us to traverse the exile gap and then kill the ad. You can see that I actively struggle with it during this fight. So if any greater Warlocks than me have tips on how to kill the damn thing faster, please do let me know. Now we're going to hold the hammer for when we come back up after a Dark Exile phase, and to deal with shields. Dealing with the Common Storm. Probably could have stopped moving a frame or two earlier, but Blizzard Circles be Blizzard Circles, and you never know when to trust them. Right, this is me targeted with Dark Exile. I've got Soul Shape. I'm going to use it. Need to wait a second to avoid the circle. And then use it again to get across. Now, doing it this time, it's not too bad. But you can see that still, I've got 3 stacks going up to 4. And then a 5th. All the while, kind of struggling with getting across, killing the ad quickly and stuff like that. I could take a deliberate death, because we do have plenty of time, but it's still not great. Now, you can see the demonic circle to get out of it. Now, unfortunately, there was a Common Storm at the same time, because what I was about to do was run in, use hammer, as you can see, and then get out, just so we can do the extra damage. Now, we do have 100% crit for another 15 seconds, which means that we are generating more shards, and Infernal's about to drop, and we can kind of just decimate this absorb now. And then just follow through. Now, for this particular boss, you could in theory use an imp to cleanse yourself to get out of the bindings, but that does mean that you then lack the kick for the enfeebles, which isn't a great trade-off. So, I would recommend using a Fell Hunter for this, but again, it does mean that you're kind of in this position where you're just trotting. Now, what I didn't realize is I didn't know that I had Soul Shape at this point, because I was focusing more on boss health, boss time, and just generally trying not to be a moron. Unfortunately, that does mean that I did actually have Soul Shape to go again. And you can see here that I really start struggling. And thankfully, the boss goes down. So that was 25 Necrotic Wake. Now, the key itself wasn't a bad key. I finished it on 20k DPS, the weapons did 21k, and they did work. The routing was a little bit new to me. For I hadn't got a lot of experience doing that particular run of like running to between the gatekeepers at the start, using stealth, and relying on the Kyrian weapon so heavily. But all in all, I think it was a good run, and I think that it's a good POV as well, so you guys can see how different runs perform, as opposed to the previous Necrotic Wake paths that I've done. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed the video, and if you have any questions, any comments, please do feel free to comment below, and maybe think about hitting the subscribe button. It'd mean a lot to me if you did. Catch you in the next one, folks, and have a great day.